All right, now we're streaming with a camera. All right, welcome. I'm Bill Collins, the owner of the school. We are here to help you prepare for your CDL road test. Is everybody here a Minnesota resident? Yes, yes, yes. Okay. And then, are you guys doing Class A or Class B? A, B, A. Okay. All right.
I'm a Wisconsin resident.
And you're a Wisconsin resident. So now the permit test in Wisconsin is going to be very similar to Minnesota's. Questions will be essentially the same. There's a couple little nuance differences um, to the computerized test, but primarily the same thing as what we're doing here. The manual is going to be the same. Are we streaming? That's all right.
Yeah,
It comes up.
It says it is. It says live, but it's showing a black screen.
Well, then that's not the right one because remember initially I didn't have the. See if you can back out of that one. Close that one.
Yeah, I got subscriptions. I'm subscribed to you guys. Interstate Truck Driving School live class. Interstate classes. Showing black screen right now. It's really odd.
Reboot that. Just close your YouTube
Okay.
and reopen YouTube
Okay.
and see if it gives you the live one. Because the interesting part of this is that I can use your laptop to double check, make sure I'm on the right page here.
You bet. Yeah, I was curious. I wanted to.
Okay, so, well, Andrew's messing with that. You all have this handout, okay? So I'll put the handout on the screen so people can see that. So to get your permit, first of all, you have to have a Class D or higher license, okay? Awesome. And then you're going to need a certified birth certificate or a passport to get your permit. What's a certified birth certificate?
From the state.
Yeah, but
It has to have the stamp on it.
exactly. It has to have the raised seal stamp on it. So not a photocopy of that, okay? You have to have the one that's got the raised seal on it, all right? You won't need that to take your permit test, but you're going to need it to get the permit, all right? Now, to prepare for the permit test, you need to study the manual. There's a federal rule that says anything on these tests has to be in the manual. So anything and everything that's in the test is in the manual for sure. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. For Class A, you're going to need to take 3 knowledge tests, all right? General knowledge, air brakes, and combinations will get you a Class A permit. For Class B, you'll need general knowledge and air brakes, okay? Assuming you're driving a vehicle with air brakes, all right? But 3 knowledge tests. And Andrew, it's going to be the same in Wisconsin, all right? Now, to prepare for those 3 knowledge tests, in Minnesota, you would study 5 sections, and this is the only thing different in the manual, Andrew, from Minnesota versus Wisconsin is Section 10 of the Wisconsin manual is the school bus stuff that Minnesota puts up in front of their chapters. So all they did was take the school bus thing and they moved it to Section 10. So what's Section 10 in Minnesota is 11 in Wisconsin. What's 11 is 12. So that's really the only difference between the manuals.
Okay.
All right. So to prepare for a Class A test, whether you're doing Minnesota or Wisconsin, you study sections 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. For Class B, study sections 1, 2, 3, and 5. All right. If you're doing a bus, include section 4. Now, to those of you that are here today, we've included a condensed version of the manual for you there, and that includes sections 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. So in that yellow hand or green folder we gave you, we don't have section 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, or 12. Okay, but all that's available online, and we'll look at that in just a minute. Then the next thing on my handout here is I'm recommending cdltest.co as your practice test website. Now that website, cdltest.co, is super accurate, especially compared to the other ones that are out there on the internet. We ran across this website perhaps 6 months ago. Prior to that, for the last 4 or 5 years, since these practice permit tests on the internet have become prevalent, I've heard a lot of complaints over the years of people saying, "Yeah, I don't understand. I take them practice tests online and I ace them suckers, and then I go take the real test and I fail it. What the heck's going on?" Well, what's going on is if the practice test you're taking isn't accurate, it's not doing you any good, right? So that's why I highly recommend the cdltest.co. It's much more accurate than any of the other websites that are out there. Okay. Try to readjust something here. That works a little better. And the way you can get to that, if you go to our website, interstatedriving.com, and then if you click on resources over here, scroll down to practice permit tests, and it takes you right to that cdltest.co. Okay? So you can either go directly to cdltest.co or go through our website, either way. All right? Make sense? All right. So, and here's another interesting tidbit of information. The questions that are on cdltest.co are very accurate, and I would not be allowed to do that. There's a state rule that prohibits me from duplicating state tests. So what they have on cdltest.co, I can't do it. I'm not allowed to do it. But I can certainly advise you to do that. All right? And we'll use cdltest.co here a little bit later on. Now, the manual is available online. And as I said, Andrew, the Minnesota one is just as accurate. The Wisconsin one is also available online too, but as a PDF. Now, what's cool about the Minnesota manual that I like, you go to mindriveinfo.org, as your handout there says, okay? So this is the main website homepage for that website. Go down here to documents. Don't click on that driver's manual because that's a car manual. Click on more documents, and then commercial license comes up. All right, so click on the commercial manual, and there's the Minnesota CDL manual. Now, what I like about using the online version is that I can search for specific things really easily. You hit Control F to open up a find box, and then type in what you're looking for. Yep, grab a pen there if you want. Anybody else need a pen? But as an example, let's say parking brake. So now it's going to take me to every place in the manual where it says parking brake. And it's not going to take me to the word parking or park or brake. And some search engines, that's what they do. Okay? They take you to different places. Hang on one second. Gentlemen, I'm doing a class back here. Hi. Thank you. So what that helps me do is it helps me find specific information. Okay. So I'm the type of person, if I'm reading something and I'm trying to remember, kind of, wait a minute, what was it that I read about such and such, right? That search process allows me to go back and find exactly that. I was doing something earlier today, and I was doing a search for something, and I typed in the words I was looking for, and it took me to every variation of it. And so that's a big waste of time because you're going to so many places. So I really like the fact that with this system, I can find anything I want pretty quickly. All right. So that to me is the advantage of the online
Where's
manual.
that again?
That's at mindriveinfo.org. It's right on your handout. Right on the first page of the handout, mindriveinfo.org.
Oh,
Okay, all right. And then the other thing that your handout brings to your attention is that the state also has an audio file. All right. So let's look at the audio file. That's back at again, mindriveinfo.org. So let me back up to the main page. So here's the main page of that. So again, you click on Documents, under More Documents, and then rather than clicking on the manual, you scroll down to where you find the audio file, and each one of these sections is available on an audio file. Okay, so for example, combination vehicles, and the website's, that part of the website's down. So I can't demonstrate that to you. Let's see if that one comes up. Oh, all right. Well, the state of Minnesota is having trouble with its website, so I can't show you that. Sorry. But all of these sections are available with an audio file, and I'll tell you this: that sections 1, 2, 1, 2, and 5 are about 40 minutes long. Section 2 is the shortest one. It's about 15 minutes long. I messed this up. Sections 1, 3, and 5 are 40 minutes long. Section 6 is about 15 minutes long. Section 2 is 3 hours and 15 minutes. There's pushing 5.5 hours worth of audio there to listen to. But that gives you an example of just how much information is in the manual. Okay, I mean this is huge how much information is in here.
and Bill, you said Wisconsin offers the same thing.
I don't know that they offer the audio.
Okay,
I've not found the audio in Wisconsin.
but I could use the Minnesota one.
Yes.
It would be pretty dang close.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
In fact, if you took the Minnesota and the Wisconsin manuals and put them side by side, I think they're word for word. But
All right.
you know, if you want to spend a little time, you might want to double check that. And know this too, that the examiner that's going to test you has told us, train your people the exact same way you're trained in Minnesota. We don't change anything. We add a couple little nuances that we've talked about. But as far as the permit test, I don't think anything's going to be different. If that's not true, let me know. But I believe it. There's a couple of little things that I'll mention as we go along that it's dead on. Now, back to the audio file for a second. You know, you all are here because you want to pass your test, get yourself a license. Got to get the permit first. I'm a strong believer in the usefulness and power of an audio file to help us retain information, okay? And as an example of that, complete the following sentence, please. Save big money at...
Menards.
Who didn't know that? You knew that, right? Now, did you try to memorize that? Did you set out to memorize that? Was that your intent to memorize that? No. How'd you memorize it? You just heard it that many times. So that's proof of what I'm telling you about here. You know, I'm an educator, right? My job, my passion is to assist people to acquire the skills and knowledge they need in order to be successful at their chosen occupational path here, okay? And I'll tell you what, it takes some work and effort to make that happen. Now, one way to pass the permit test is to take it 12 times. I mean, take it 12 times, fail it 11 times. By the 12th time you pass the thing, that's a way to do it, right? Okay? Because every time you take it and fail it and take it and fail it and take it and fail it, you're learning. Because you're answering questions incorrectly, and hopefully you learn what the correct answer through that process. Well, there's another way to go about that to be successful, and I would suggest that's to study the material in the first place, and then you won't take it 12 times to get there. Make sense? And a tool to assimilate that information so you can remember it is to listen to it. So listen to this as often as you can. You know, you're on a mission here. Your mission is to succeed. So use that audio file best you can. All right. Okay. Double check something here. Okay. All right. Let's go back to my handout here. So one permit test is allowed on any one subject per day. Remember, you Class A drivers are going to have to take 3 knowledge tests. You Class B drivers, 2 knowledge tests. One attempt at any one subject is allowed per day. You can take all of them, you can take as many as you want in any given day. You just can't take more than one on any given subject per day. And don't think that you could go to one exam station, fail something, go to another exam station same day, because they do put you in the computer. So they're going to know that you're going down the road, okay? Your first and second attempt in Minnesota is free. Andrew, I can't tell you what it is in Wisconsin. If you fail 2 tests on any particular subject, then subsequent tests, your third, fourth, fifth, whatever, is going to be $10 each. All right. I have people that complain about that $10. I don't know why you'd complain about that. Do you realize how much money you're going to make as a truck driver? Come on. Okay. The return on investment here is huge. I get a kick out of people who call me up and say, interest in truck driver training, how much is your training? And I'll say, well, our professional program is $5,000. And people go, oh my God, it's a lot of money. My oldest stepson went to Brown College, spent $40,000 on an education as a radio engineer, got a job with KSTP AM radio as a radio engineer for $10.20 an hour. After he'd been there for 3 years, he was all the way up to $10.80. He had a $40,000 education to do it. I have a stepdaughter who went to St. Kate's for her bachelor's degree, then to the University of Minnesota Humphrey Institute for her master's degree. She's got over $100,000 invested in her education, and she does not make as much as you guys can make in your first year. She's making pretty good money, but you can make better. Okay? The return on investment is huge here. So when it comes to that $10, I'm like, are you kidding me? You're going to complain about $10? Just go take the test again. Now, in Minnesota, the test is available on paper or on a computer. Most exam stations will require you to take it on the computer first. The computers do have headphones you can listen to. So if you like that feature, then you're going to want to take it on the computer. Personally, I like the paper one. And I like the paper version for 2 reasons. First and foremost, with the Minnesota computerized test, you cannot skip questions. And I don't like that. The Wisconsin one, I'm told you can skip questions, but in Minnesota you can't, okay? And I don't like that. I can't tell you how many times I'll remember something 5 minutes later. I do it constantly, every day. And so I'll get a question, I'll go, geez, you know, I know the answer to that, but what was it? And I'm better off if I can go on to the next couple of questions, and then something will trigger in my head, and then I'll be able to go back and answer it. Well, with the computer in Minnesota, you can't do that. Obviously, with the paper you can, because nobody's got a gun to your head forcing you to answer every question. Now, if you do use the paper one, and you're going to skip questions, by golly, remember to go back and answer those questions, because if you forget to do that, you're going to lose points. Make sense? So make sure you answer every question. The other thing that I like about the paper one versus the computer is the computer scores you instantaneously. So if you get an answer wrong, it tells you right away. I don't like that. Because what happens, that's distracting to me. Because then my little brain's going, 1, 2, okay? And now I'm distracted. You have to get 80% correct. And so 80%. So I'm going to be sitting there doing math in my head as I get them wrong. Well, let's see, there's 20 questions, and I got to get 80%. And, oh, wait a minute, I asked them at the counter, what did they tell me? Oh, kind of, and do you see how that is distracting to me, right? So I'm better off, you know, it's kind of that ignorance is bliss type of concept. I'm better off not knowing whether I got it right or wrong at that point in time. Now, if you do the paper one, they'll correct it for you, obviously, and they'll tell you what the correct answer was if you got it wrong. So you're still going to get that piece of information. You're just waiting for that to come at the end of the process. What's interesting is that the state of Minnesota, although they have both computer and paper available, they want you to take the computerized version first. Why do you suppose they want you to do that one? Because it's less doggone work for them. by golly, they should have to actually do some work downtown. Oh my goodness gracious me alive, they're state employees. Oh yeah, they're state employees, that's what. I'm pretty frustrated with their policy. And what really galls me about that policy is that that policy ignores the United States Constitution. I served this country honorably, and that Constitution is important to me. And by golly, by gum, if you're a state agency, you're going to follow the Constitution. So don't be telling me that I got to take it on a computer, but Fred over here that goes to Red Wing, where they don't have the computers, can take it on paper. Right? That doesn't fit the guidelines of the Constitution that says all men and women should be treated equal under the rule of law. So if you want to take it on paper, you got two choices. Go to Red Wing or Stillwater or one of those exam stations that don't have the computer. Now, they're not open every day, and that's why they don't have the computers. Okay? And then they have it strictly on paper, and you can take it on paper. Or you could go to the Egan exam station and go in there and make a fuss and a hissy fit and insist on, and I've had students successfully do that, make enough of a stink where they gave it to them on paper. Okay? And again, the only reason they don't want to do that is because it takes too much work for them. I mean, they got to put the correction key over it and correct it. It takes them maybe 30 seconds. The computerized version doesn't take them any time. They hit a button and get your scores. Right? So they're just lazy. Well, excuse me, but I'm a truck driver. Lazy doesn't fit into my psyche here, okay? So there's your choices, paper or on a computer. Next sentence on my handout, you must arrive at least an hour before the exam station closes. I'd suggest 2 hours to be safe. A Class A test is going to take you, between the 3 knowledge tests that you got to take for a Class A, that's 100 questions. For the Class B, it's going to be 80. Okay? Andrew, I think yours is the same, 100 questions. It's going to take you a while to answer 100 questions, so I'd get there more than an hour ahead of time. But an hour would be the absolute minimum, right? You can find the locations for the exam stations at mendriveinfo.org. Next line here, you can take one subject at a time if that works for you. You could go in on Monday, take general knowledge, go back on Tuesday, take air brakes, go back on Wednesday and take combinations. You can do that, all right? You could even do this within the same day. So in other words, let's say you go in first thing in the morning and take the general knowledge, pass it, tell them, okay, I'll be back, go out in your car, study for 45 minutes, listen to some music, go back in, take the next test, pass that, say I'll be back, go back on the parking lot, study some more, relax some more, come back in and take the next one. You can do that too, okay? Now, let me caution you, anytime you leave an exam station, make sure that you have a copy of any documents that are of value to you. Don't walk out of there without some sort of document if you've passed the test. If they don't want to give it to you, if they want to say, no, we'll hold on to it since you, they might ask you, are you coming back here? Yep, well then we'll hold on to it for you. Then I'd say, fine, can I have a copy? If they say, well, no, we'll hold on to it for you. I'd say, wait a second, let me see it for a second, and I'd take a picture of it with my phone. I do not trust the Minnesota Department of Public Safety with my documents. They have been known to lose stuff, and here's their attitude. And you know, this is interesting to be putting this out on YouTube where everybody can see it, okay? Because I'm very critical of the Minnesota Department of Public Safety in some respects, and this is one of the things that really galls me. So you go in there, you take a test, you pass it, you come back the next day. Yeah, I'm here to take the next test. Oh well, we can't find that other one, so you'll have to retake it. Sir, ma'am, I was here yesterday. I passed the test. I want credit for it. Well, gee, we can't find it. Besides, if you passed it yesterday, you should be able to pass it today. And that's their attitude, okay? It's like, no, I want credit for what I got. So make sure you document this. And then, this is really important. Make sure that when your license arrives, you examine that front and back, okay? We've had more than one student. They've got a permit that allows them to drive a vehicle with air brakes. They took a road test in a vehicle with air brakes. They get a license in the mail that says they're not allowed to drive air brakes. It's happened on more than one occasion. One of our students, he didn't realize that. He didn't read his license. He went a year and a half not realizing it. And in a normal inspection, got pulled over by a trooper, and the trooper says, you can't drive this truck, son. What? You can't drive this truck, son. What are you talking about? I've been driving for a year and a half. Well, you've been driving illegal for a year and a half then, son, because look, it says right here in your license, no air brakes. Now, the good news is he was able to come back here, and because of the documentation we had, he was able to get that resolved. We had a student last year who took his Class A test, and the way this occurred with him, he took the first time he took the test, he passed the pre-trip, didn't pass the driving. So he came back 3 weeks later, passed the driving test. And the interesting thing about this is that we have dash cameras in our trucks. We're the only school in the country that has that. I had to sue the state of Minnesota over that, and we won. So we got the dash camera in the truck, and so the conversation was, congratulations, here's your paperwork, you passed your test, thank you very much. The examiner says, okay, you can go inside now and get your license. And this young man says, well, I didn't bring my certified birth certificate with me, so I was planning to go to Chaska tomorrow. Well, that's fine. Just take all this to Chaska with your birth certificate, and you'll be good. Congratulations. Have a good day. Thank you very much. Bye. So 4 weeks later, he gets a letter from the state of Minnesota. He went to Chaska and did his paperwork the next day. So 4 weeks later, he gets a letter from the state of Minnesota that says you've applied for a Class A license, but there's no record of your road test. You got to go take a road test and pass it in order for us to process your application. So he gets this letter and he goes to Chaska and he goes, look at this letter they give me. And they look it up on the computer and they go, yep, no road test. Dude, I took a road test. Why would you process this thing and give it to me if I didn't do that? Well, I don't know, but there's no road test. Well, I took it in Egan. Well, go back to Egan, see what you can do there. So he goes back to Egan, and they give him the same spiel, look him up on the computer. Yep, no road test. So he comes back here, and, do you guys have any documents that says we passed the test? Well, we've got the video. I don't just have a document. I got a video of it because there's a dash camera in there. This whole conversation with this test, right? And so what we did was we played that on a monitor for him and had him videotape it off the monitor with his phone, right? So he went back to Egan. He goes into Egan. He goes, I got this on video. And they're like, well, go to Chaska. They're the ones that screwed it up. He drives to Chaska. They say, no, go back to Egan. They're the ones that screwed it up. He goes back to Egan. This is all on the same day. Okay, now he's at Egan for the third time in the same day, right? And they're still stonewalling him, saying, nope, you got to take a road test. Our computer records say you didn't take the road test. And so he calls us, and I relayed through one of my staff. I said, well, advise the supervisor that they'll be hearing from my attorney shortly. And 10 minutes later, this young man called us back and says, okay, the supervisor just called me and said they worked it out. They're gonna take care of it for me. But I had to threaten them with getting my attorney involved. We had it on video. I mean, we told them, here's when the test happened, here's what time it was, here's the paperwork, and here's the videotape. And initially they're like, nope. I mean, that's their attitude towards stuff. They don't care about you or me. What are you going to do? Move to Wisconsin with Andrew? Okay. So they just don't care. So my point is document everything, okay? Either walk out of there with a copy of it or photograph it. And then anything you get from the state of Minnesota, look it over very carefully and make sure everything's done right. Make sure your birth date's correct, all that stuff. Make sense? All right, which leads us into the last sentence on the handout here about the medical self-certification form. Now, what I'm about to explain to you is worth your time here alone. There's a lot of confusion about this. So let me explain it. And what we're talking about is a form, and I'm going to put it on the screen for you here. You all have this form in your handout. It should be the last page of the handout you received from us. So if you find that, that's what it looks like. Okay. So now, this form has to be filled out, signed, and submitted when you get your permit. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Did you get one of those?
I get a green folder.
That's the page and title.
Okay.
All right, so again, this form has to be filled out, signed, and submitted anytime you get your permit, also when you get your license, and again in any renewal. All right? Now, if you look at this form, there are 4 different potential categories, and you have to certify which one of those 4. You have to be one of those 4 and sign it and submit it. All right? So let's go over the 4 categories. Category 1 and 2 are interstate. That allows you to operate beyond state borders and within your own state, hauling interstate commerce. Interstate commerce means if there's something on your truck that either came from or is going to another state, that's interstate commerce, even if you're staying here. Okay? So let's say you're running around town here delivering stuff to quick trip stores. The products back here came from other states. That's interstate commerce. So intrastate commerce, which is category 3 and 4, that's staying within the state of Minnesota, but also has to be the product was made, manufactured, and comes from the state of Minnesota, and it's staying here. So what does that include? Gravel, garbage, very limited as to what intrastate is comprised of. Now, who fits into the intrastate category? Two types of people fit into the intrastate category. First of all, if you're under age 21, anybody under age 21. Okay, so you're all interstate in that regard. Second category that would fit somebody into intrastate, the criteria to pass a DOT physical is higher for a interstate than it is intrastate. Two examples. For interstate, you have to be able to see 20/40 out of both eyes, corrected, but 20/40 out of both eyes. You can get a waiver and get a DOT physical to drive intrastate if you can see 20/40 in one eye. Another example, diabetes. If you're insulin dependent, it's very difficult to get a waiver to allow you to drive interstate. Much easier to get a waiver to drive intrastate if you're insulin dependent. Hearing impaired is also true. If you're hearing impaired, you can get a intrastate waiver pretty easily. If you want an interstate waiver for hearing impaired, you have to actually apply to the feds and go through a big, long process and be granted it. And I'll tell you this right now, there are a lot of people in the industry that are pushing back and telling the feds not to grant any more interstate waivers for hearing impaired. The problem that we see from the industry with that is how do you identify air leaks if you can't hear? You know, the other aspects of driving trucks, maybe there's an accommodation for it for hearing impaired, but how do you identify an air leak? Okay, that's a big part of your inspection process is checking for air leaks. How would you know if something's leaking? Yeah, the gauge would tell you that something's leaking, but how are you going to find it, figure out where it is if you're hearing impaired? So that's the two distinctions. So those of you that are here, you're looking at being interstate. Now, the question is, do you need a medical card or not? Do you need a DOT medical card that's current? If you're working for somebody, getting paid, driving a commercial motor vehicle, then the answer to that question is yes. If you're not getting paid, then the answer to that question is no. If you're not getting paid, you don't have to have a medical on file. So who would want a license then or a permit if you're not getting paid? Well, in this part of the process where you're not getting paid yet, you might not have gotten around to it. That's fine. You can get a permit, drive a truck, as long as nobody's paying you to drive that truck, without having a health card. Well, in that case, you are exempt. You're category number 2. All right? The minute you want to get paid to drive the truck, now you got to be into category 1. You are to get a health card, submit that information to the state, and they record it on your driver file in the computer system. Okay? There's also some government jobs where you don't have to have the health card also. Now, once, and this is important too, I should explain this. There's a real driver shortage now. You all know that, right? Okay? And one of the driving forces creating that driver shortage as strong as it is right now is for years and years and years and years, all we had to do to satisfy this health card requirement was have a signed health card in our wallet, and the truck stops were selling blank ones for $4. How hard was it to have a health card? $4 and a buddy with penmanship that's different than yours, and now you got a health card. Now that's fraudulent, and so it's conceivable you could get jammed up for that, but that's how easy it was to have a health card, right? Well, the feds figured out that all this fraud was going on with that, and so they created this national registry, okay? And this national registry, these are people that have gone to the feds and taken training, testing, and are now certified by the feds to do these, I hate to call them medical exams because that sounds bad, but they're the ones that are doing the physicals to determine if you pass a DOT physical. So if you want to take a DOT physical, what you would do is go to this website. This is off the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. And you type in your zip code, and this thing will tell you where the local providers are that are on this national registry, okay? First one that comes up there is Dr. Gina. She's a chiropractor. She's actually moved. She's on Upper 55th now in Inver Grove Heights. And then Dr. Dan. Dr. Dan actually comes here on Monday afternoons. His office is over in Burnsville. So if we were to do a Burnsville search, Dr. Dan would come up also, okay? So you have to go to somebody that's on this national registry. People ask all the time, well, what about my local clinic? Well, you'd have to look them up and see if they're on the national registry, all right?
These are people that do DOT physicals?
Right.
So that is the health card you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just making sure that that's what you're talking about.
Yep. And see on here, you see that here's the guy's registry number.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So that means he's a certified provider, and therefore, and part of what happens then is that they take the fact that they did a physical for you and they enter it into a database. Okay. And then what you have to do is you have to submit that to the state, and then they enter you in their database. If we go back here,
I submitted to the state when I do my.
well, that's what the form does. Okay, so in other words, when you do this, when you've got a medical, you would submit this form to the state of Minnesota, or in your case, state of Wisconsin, fill it out, sign that you're Category 1, and provide them a copy of it. Okay? And then what they do is they go in and enter that in your driver file. Let me go back to that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter my driver's license here. And since I'm doing this live on the internet, I'm going to scratch that off. Okay. So that's me, all right? That's my driving, that's my public record, okay? So I have a Class A license, my Class D is valid, my commercial is valid. Here's my endorsements. I got motorcycle, double, triple, tanker, and passenger. I have no restrictions. There's the date it was issued. Here's the expiration date for the driver's license. My CDL self-certification, I am non-exempt interstate, so that's Category 1 on this form, okay? I wish that didn't carry over on that, but I'm Category 1. My medical status is certified, and here's something really, really important. Here is my expiration date, all right? So my medical expires on June 5th of 2019. All right? Now, remember this. 60 days before that expiration date, the state of Minnesota is going to send me a letter. And here's the last letter I got, okay? And I'll read you this verbatim. This letter is furnished as a courtesy to you by Driver Vehicle Services. Your medical examiner certificate will expire on blah, blah, blah. If you wish to maintain your commercial driving privilege, please submit the following documents. What this letter should say in big, bold, red print, dude, your medical is going to expire. If you don't renew it, you lose your license. Because that's what happens. You lose your commercial license if you don't submit a new form by that date. Okay? And there are people, again, I mean, this letter is so passive. This is furnished as a courtesy to you. If you wish to maintain. If you have any other questions, please call us. Well, call the state of Minnesota. You're going to get an answer out of those guys? Good Lord, you'll be on the phone forever, on hold. So my point is that this letter is sometimes overlooked by people, and then they don't renew their certification, and then they lose their CDL. Now, they take your CDL away from you. I almost left my wallet in the other room. They take your CDL away from you, If you renew it within 365 days, it's not a problem. But if you go 366 days without renewing it, and then let's say that you go in to renew your license, okay? So you go in and you go, yep, I'm here to renew my license. Here's my license. And they'll go, well, let's see. You don't have a commercial license anymore. Ma'am, what are you talking about? I've had a commercial license for 23 years. Well, not now, sir. Ma'am, look right there in the license. It says Class A right there. Well, you used to have a Class A license. Okay, ma'am, well, I haven't had any tickets, haven't been arrested for anything. What's the problem here? Well, it's your medical card, sir. Well, medical? Oh, well, I renewed that. Here, let me show you my new medical. Oh, okay, well, that's good. Now you can go over and take your permit test. What? Yep, you have to start all over, sir. You have to take your permit test. You have to wait 14 days. Then you can take your road test, and if you pass, you'll get your license back. Ma'am, look out the window. See that there truck that I just done drove here? You telling me it ain't legal for me to drive that truck? Yes, sir, that's right. We've had people that are in that situation, working, driving truck for a living, and find out that they haven't had a license for a year and a half because they forgot to send the stupid form in. Now, let me bring this to your attention. One of the things that happens to people is they go into this process, they get their CDL, they get a job, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 14, 18 months later, they get a different job, okay? So then sometime after that, they get the notice about the medical is expiring, right? So you get this letter in the mail, oh, my medical is expiring. Well, I ain't using my CDL anyway, so who cares? The problem is they take away your license. You could submit the form, resubmit the form when it expires, and check category 2. Because you're not getting paid to drive a truck, right? Well, then you don't need it. Fine, resubmit the form. They let you keep your license. Then down the road, if you need to use the license again, just go back, take your physical, resubmit, go back into category 1, non-exempt interstate, boom, bang, bang, you're good to go. But don't drop your license. If you're going to go through all the work and effort it takes to get a commercial license, don't lose that sucker. People will go in to renew their license, and it costs more, okay? A Class D license is like $18.50 to renew, and a Class A is like $46.50 or something, whatever. 30 bucks more maybe. Pay the 30 bucks. You can always fall back on it. I'm 67 years old. I can get a job driving truck today. I can make 75,000 bucks a year starting today, and I'm 67 years old. Now, how many 67-year-old people can say that? Computer IT people can't say that. Machinists can't say that. Printers can't say that. Construction people can't say that. Airline pilots are not allowed to. They got to retire at 65. I can keep working. There's drivers out there well into their 70s making really good dough. Stay healthy. Keep your driving record clean. Okay?
Yeah, my great grandfather drove till he was like 86.
Yep.
So now, how often do you have to do these forms then?
Well, okay. Good question. How often do you need to redo the form? Every time your medical expires.
Okay.
Now, if you're healthy, you're going to get a 2-year medical card. If you got some health issues, let's say you're on medication for high blood pressure, then they'll give you a 1-year card. So some things will kick it down to less than 2 years.
So you renew your CDL and endorsement every time?
No, the medical is separate from the CDL.
Oh, okay.
The medical is separate from the CDL, but if you don't recertify your medical, they take your CDL away from you. If you certify that you're exempt, which is category 2, I'm exempt. And what exempt says is I'm not getting paid to drive a truck right now, right? Then you can keep your CDL forever and you'll never have to renew that status. So they'll never send you a letter once you're exempt, you're good forever. Keep renewing your license every 4 years when that comes up. And if you're going to go back to driving truck, then you'd have to go back, get the physical again, and recertify to the non-exempt status. Make sense?
Okay, so it's when your license expires, that's when you renew your CDL also.
When your license expires, you renew your CDL.
Okay.
The medical is renewed based on the expiration date of the medical.
Right. Okay. I got
So those are not going to be the same dates.
Okay.
Not unless you went and took a DOT physical on your birth date. Because is that when they expire in Wisconsin? Is on your birth date?
Yes.
Okay, same thing here, right? So you'd have to go take a medical on your birth date. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm not going to go get prodded by a doctor on my birthday. Okay? Anyway. Okay.
So your CDL won't expire unless you let it?
Right. You just keep renewing it. You just keep paying the
Once you
price.
get it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And there aren't any other tests you'll have to take unless, other than maintaining a hazmat endorsement. Hazmat endorsement does require subsequent retests at renewal. But everything else is just grandfathered in, no retests are required. And you'll be able to go to any state and transfer your CDL, but when you go to another state, most states will make you take the Class D car knowledge test. And the reason they do that is there could well be different rules one state to another, you know, just general rules for everybody. And so that's why the states typically make people take a general knowledge test when transferring. But your CDL is going to transfer right over, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. So remember that part of the process. And incidentally, when it comes to hazmat, if you are going to get hazmat, I would add it after you get your license in the mail. Andrew's lucky. In the state of Wisconsin, he's going to get his license like in 10 days. All right. Y'all, have you heard on the news lately how Department of Public Safety is still screwed up with their processing? Okay. They just spent, I don't know how many millions of dollars, like $30–40 million on a new system last July, and it's still screwed up. Okay. It's taking a very long time to get titles. I just got a title in the mail for a trailer I bought about 3 months ago. Just got it yesterday. It's 3 months to process a title. You got to be kidding me. What in the world is going on? So the hazmat will slow that down even more. So if you're going to add hazmat to a license, I would suggest you get the license first, then go back in and add the hazmat to it. The benefit of that is you'll get into the state computer system quicker. We've got a lot of students that have had trouble going to work. They've got a job someplace all lined up, right? And they've passed their test. They've gone in and paid their money. So they got a piece of paper that says they have applied for a commercial license. But if they're not in the computer, most of these companies won't put them to work. And so they're sitting at home twiddling their thumbs, all PO'd, because they're waiting to get into the computer. Now the state still does have a explanation of the expedited license process on their website. If we go over here to more documents again, and we go to driver's license, and I've included this in your handout, those of you that are here. There is a expedited license process. You'd have to go to a deputy registrar to do that. It costs an extra 20 bucks. Now this form is dated July 2017, so I believe this is true. That will get you in your license quicker by doing that. It has to be done at a deputy registrar, not at a DVS location. The DVS, Driver Vehicle Services Division, Department of Public Safety, those are the exam stations. You can't do this at an exam station. You have to go to a deputy registrar. What's a deputy registrar? That's where you can buy license tabs for your car. If you can buy license tabs and transfer titles, that's a deputy registrar. You can go there, pay the 20 bucks, and then and then what it says here, according to this, that it'll be processed within 3 days, and you'll typically receive it within 10 days. Okay, that's what it says.
Just to get your license.
That's to get your license. Okay, and so if you're trying to go to work for somebody, get a job, I'd spend the 20 bucks. I mean, do the math. Sit for 5 weeks not making any money, or go to work in 10 days, and it costs you $20. I would do that. Then add the hazmat after that. Okay, go ahead and take your hazmat test ahead of time. Go ahead and do the background check. Just don't go to the state of Minnesota and pay the $2.50 to add it to your license. Now the system, what I'm suggesting you do is do the fast track for your license. That's going to cost you 20 bucks. And then add the hazmat after that. It'll cost you an extra $18.50 doing that. So I'm suggesting you spend an extra $38.50 to get your license in your hand quicker, to get it in the state computer quicker, so you can get to work quicker, is my suggestion, okay? All right. So now let's talk about the test, all right? Let's see where I am here. I've had my license since 1975. In 1984, the feds passed a law, changed a bunch of things. The thing that's relevant to our conversation is they required all of us that had a license at that point to go in and take a general knowledge test to renew our license when it came up for renewal. And a truckload of drivers were failing the written test because they never had to take one before. So the feds went to the organization that prints the manual, and the people that print the manual. It's called AMVA, American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators. AMVA is a clearinghouse for the states. This is the purpose and the function of AMVA is so that you or I could go buy a car in Wisconsin and come over here with that Wisconsin title and be able to title it in Minnesota. So it allows this and the transferring of licenses, okay? So that's what the whole point of AMVA was to do, was to allow an interchange between the states, some sort of clearinghouse process. And so they got involved in also the manuals to try to create some consistency one state to another with the manuals, right? So AMVA published the manual. All these drivers were having trouble passing the test. The feds went to AMVA and said, what can you do to help these guys pass the stupid test because they're having trouble? And AMVA came up with this great idea. They said, okay, look, here's what we're going to do in the manual. We're going to create these test your knowledge boxes. And these test your knowledge boxes are the questions on the test. Come on, computer, okay? These are the questions on the test. Why is this thing slow? Okay? And these are spread out through the chapters. They're not at the end of each chapter. They're throughout each section, okay? If you know the answers to these questions, you will pass your test. Those are the things you need to study, all right? Now, again, I told you that this is 5 to 6 hours worth of reading. I would read this over, but then what I would do is I'd come to these test your knowledge boxes, and I would make certain that I know the answer to it. So if I was really being studious about this, what I'd do is I'd go back in that section, find that information, and then I highlight it, okay? And that system I told you about with the find boxes, so check this out. Like, for example, what things do you check during a trip? So if I copy and paste check during a trip into my find box, and comes up there. Okay, let me change this a little bit. Let me change it to during a trip. There we go. So there's the information that I'm supposed to check during a trip. So you see what I did is I took 3 key words out of that question, put it into my find box, search for it, and that tells me what the answers. I should check my gauges. Okay? And then right down here it says you should see, hear, smell, or feel. If you see, hear, smell, or feel anything, check it out. So that's going to be the correct information for that. So if I go back to test your knowledge, the next question is, come on, computer, you can do it. I know you can. Come on.
Are you using this off the internet or is this a downloaded PDF?
No, this is on the internet.
It looks like you can, it says .pdf, so you can probably download it.
Yeah, you can download it.
Then you don't have to work.
You know, and my concern then is that are you using the most accurate one, or have they updated it since then? So that, to me, is the advantage of
Is this test
Do
going
it
to
this
be fill in the blank or multiple choice?
Multiple choice and true false. Okay. Let me try one more thing here. Let's try suspension system defects. I'm going to type that in, paste that in. Just want to show you that this is a great way to find the correct information. There we go. Well, there it is in the question. Here are the suspension system defects. So do you get that? There's the correct information to answer that question. So again, I just use, I go in and copy and paste 2 or 3 or 4 of the keywords from the question, and then I can find it in the section. I mean, how much quicker is that than going back and reading 12 pages, you know? So any of this stuff, you know, like test hydraulic brakes. Paste that into my find box.
Emergency equipment, I'm sure that number 5.
Well, it works, trust me. Just my computer is really slow today for whatever reason. Maybe the state's having trouble with their website. We should let's check real quick and see if the audio file is back up and running. So again, you go to their website, click on more documents, scroll down to the audio file and see if anything works here. Nope, still not. Okay, and we're still on hydraulic brakes on it. So let's do this, since this isn't working very well. We'll get rid of that. Oh, a couple more things on the handout that I've given you. If you're born somewhere outside the U.S., those are the citizenship documents you would need to get a permit or a license. Here's the medical renewal information that I was just talking about, so I'm not going to belabor that. And then also included in your handout the federal rules on driver qualifications. If you have any questions on any of that stuff, just give our office a call and we'll be able to help you out with that. All right, so let's do this. I have a slide presentation that I can show you here once this loads up. And we're going to go through these questions, okay? And come on, there we go. All right, so the first question in that test your knowledge stuff that we were dealing with was in section 2 there. What's the most important reason for doing a vehicle inspection? Well, safety is the most important reason. Question 2, what things should you check during a trip? And that's what we were looking at just a second ago. Watch your gauges and use your senses to check for problems. That's going to be the correct answer, okay? Next question, name some key steering system parts. Well, on page 2.2 of the manual, they have a diagram that lists those things. Steering wheel, tie rod, steering shaft, power steering cylinder, steering arm, spindle, steering nickel, drag link, pitman arm, gearbox, and hydraulic fluid reservoir. So the way the question is going to manifest itself then is that the question will say, name some key steering system parts. Answer A is going to say leaf spring, shock absorber, U-bolt. B will say brake lining, push rod, slack adjuster. C will say steering knuckle, drag link, and spindle. So you simply need to identify which one of those 3 answers has the steering system components to it, okay? Next question, name some suspension system defects. Well, I showed you that a minute ago in the manual, remember? There's the suspension system defects that are on page 2.2 of the manual. Spring hangers that allow movement of axle from proper position, cracked or broken spring hangers, missing broken leafs in any leaf spring. If 1/4 or more of those leaf springs are missing, it puts the vehicle out of service. Broken leaves in a multiple leaf spring or leaves that shifted, so they might hit a tire on the part. So those are your potential suspension system defects. And I'd like to point out that trucks in the past had multiple leaf springs. This example, there's 18 of them. We don't have that anymore. These trucks don't have those kinds of numbers of springs. The metallurgical process has improved to the point where now if they've got leaf springs, there's like 2. Okay? So we don't have the problems with suspension components the way we used to. What 3 kinds of emergency equipment must you have? Any ideas?
Triangles,
Yep.
fire extinguisher.
So fire extinguishers, talk about that first. Properly rated, fully charged, and secured. Okay. What you need is a 5 BC. This is a 10, so half of this is fine. Okay. Rated as a BC. B is for flammable liquid. C is for electrical. Fully charged, it'll have a gauge. The needle needs to be in the green. You don't need a tag. We have to have tags for fire extinguishers in buildings, but not in vehicles. And then securely attached, okay? If it's not securely attached, you'll learn that the hard way, the way I did, and a fire extinguisher is going to go off in your pickup truck. That happened to me a while back. I looked down at my shoe and I got home one day and I go, what the hell, who barfed on my shoe? The thing was underneath my seat and went off, okay?
Oh,
Yeah, that's what I said. All right, so fire extinguisher, properly rated, fully charged, and secure. That'll come up on your road test too. Reflective triangles, and then what's the third thing? Anybody know? Spare fuses. Whatever. That's what's required. Okay. All right. What's the minimum tread depth for front tires?
3/8.
No, 4.
4 30 seconds. Okay. Which would if it would be an eighth. Okay. 4 30 seconds is an eighth. Right? Okay. But don't say an eighth. 4 30 seconds, the correct answer. See, the deal is in the tire industry, tread depth is measured in 30 seconds of an inch increments. So this is a tread depth indicator, and it goes from 0 to 32. So, and the way you do this is you put the probe over the tread, push the probe down, read the little device, and it tells you how many 30 seconds of tread depth you have, okay? So front tires are 4 30 seconds. What are the rears? 2 30 seconds. How about trailer tires? 2 30 seconds. Okay? And since we're on the subject of tires, what kind of vehicle are you not allowed to have recaps on the front? Buses. If I had a city truck, a garbage truck or something, I'd put recaps on the front maybe, but I would never put recaps on the front of an over-the-road rig. Would never do it. It's too risky. Okay? But it is allowed. Not allowed on buses. Okay?
What's a recap?
Well, that's where the original tread is worn off. You buff it down and you put more tread on the outside of it and use it again.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yep. So it's like resoling your shoes. Okay?
A lot cheaper than buying a new tire.
Yeah, about somewhere between a third to half the cost, maybe somewhere in that range.
But it's illegal, right?
Only on buses.
Oh.
Only on the front of buses. Every truck I've got, I've got every truck I've got brand new. Well, every road truck, I've got brand new tires on the front and recaps on the rear and recaps on the trailers. I don't spend the money on new tire on virgin tires for the back of my tractor. I'll put recaps on.
They're pretty reliable.
Oh yeah, and much more reliable than the old days. And the other thing about tires that I'll share with you is if you're doing your inspections properly, you will never blow a tire. I promise you that. If you're doing your inspections properly, that's pre-trip and in route. Pre-trip, that means you get out with a gauge and check your tires. Now, I'll use a gauge anytime I'm going on a trip. If I'm running locally, I might hit it with a hammer and do it that way. But if I'm going on a trip, I'm going to use a gauge before I head out. And then as I go along, and we're required to stop. Anybody know when that first inspection is required in a day? At 50 miles, you're supposed to do your first one, okay? And then after that, every 3 hours or 150 miles, whichever comes first. So on any given day, I have to, if I was running over the road, you'd have to stop at least 4 times during the day and check. And so those in-route inspections, those stops where I check, what I do is I use an infrared temperature gun. And what I'm looking for is a disparity, a big difference in heat between one tire and another. And a tire will overheat before it fails. They don't fail without overheating first. I've never had one fail that didn't overheat first. So if you're doing your pre-trip inspection and doing your in-route inspections properly, you'll never blow a tire. I've been doing this for 40 years. Every single tire I've had trouble with, I can go back and say that I wasn't doing my job from the get-go. Okay, and I've made some mistakes with that over the years. Probably blown a half dozen tires. Every single time, I could have prevented it if I'd done what I was supposed to do. Okay. All right. Name some things you should check on the front of your vehicle during a walk-around inspection. Boy, that's an open-ended question, but what they say on page 2.3 is you're supposed to look underneath the vehicle for leaks. What should wheel bearing seals be checked for? Leaks. Okay, and that's both inner and outer. You should check your hub seals, both inner and outer, make sure there's not grease leaking on the outside or on the inside on the brakes. How many of them there triangles are we supposed to have? 3 of them, yep. How do you test hydraulic brakes for leaks? Now, why is that even a question? When I was mentioning to all of you earlier, I said you got to take that air brake knowledge test. That's presuming you're getting a Class A or B license where air brakes come into play. So why are air brakes even in the equation? Well, there's a Class C license too. A Class A license allows you to drive any size truck or trailer with a weight rating of 26,000 pounds or more than 26,000 pounds in combination. The trailer, if it has a weight rating, not necessarily weighs, but just a weight rating, in excess of 10,000 pounds, then that's a Class A rig. A Class B, any size truck with a weight rating over 26,000 pounds. Trailers, however, limited to 10,000 pounds. So it's a pretty small trailer. So what's a Class C? Well, Class C is when you're under 26,000 pounds, so you don't need an A or B, but you want an endorsement for either hazmat or passenger. There are buses out there, 22 passenger buses, that aren't Class B vehicles. They're not rated at 26,001 pounds. They might be rated at 18,000 pounds. They're only an 18 passenger or 22 passenger bus or something, okay? Somewhere in that range. Well, those vehicles would have hydraulic brakes. So air brakes is not required to drive them. And you'd have to test the hydraulic brakes as a part of your road test inspection. So you need to know how to test hydraulic brakes. Anybody know what the formula is? Pump the brake pedal 3 times, hold for 5 seconds. During that 5 seconds, the pedal can't go down. So pump 3 times, hold for 5 seconds. Okay? That's your hydraulic brake leak check. Okay? So and then the 11th question here in that first section, why put the starter switch key in your pocket during a pre-trip? Well, that's pretty easy to figure out. So nobody starts the truck up while you're underneath it doing an inspection. So then, those questions were back on page 204 or something like that. On page 210 is your next test your knowledge box. Why should you back towards the driver's side? So you can see better. If stopped in a hill, how can you start moving forward without rolling back? And the manual goes into this explanation about using the parking brake and also using the trailer brake hand valve. This is another throwback to old technology. You don't have any trouble getting a truck moving up a hill now. With these trucks with the diesel and the torque, you don't have to use the parking brake. You don't have to use anything else. You can just go. But that's the correct answer in the manual, so that's what you answer on your test. Whatever they say. When backing, why is it important to use a helper? And the key word to that one is so as to avoid blind spots, okay? That would be the answer to that one. To avoid those blind spots. What's the most important hand signal that you and the helper should agree on? Stop. Stop. Exactly. And let me also throw this in. If you're ever backing up with someone that's assisting you back there, if you lose sight of them, what should you do? Stop the truck. Get out, find them before you proceed. Okay. What two special conditions? What are the two special conditions where you should downshift? And what they tell us is before starting down a hill and before entering a curve. Okay. When should you downshift automatic transmissions? Well, the interesting thing is here, today's automatic transmissions are sophisticated to the point where they downshift themselves. I don't need to downshift. I've got a little diesel in my pickup truck. Automatic transmission. It downshifts itself. I go down a steep hill, the thing figures it out all by itself and starts downshifting. Okay? So I don't have to manually downshift the transmission. But the manual, written by AMVA, they're not in tune with today's technology, so they tell you to do that before you start down a hill. Okay? Next question. Retarders keep you from skidding when the road is slippery. Any idea whether that's true or false? Well, first of all, what's a retarder? Okay? A retarder is an engine brake. Okay? Let's go back and look at the manual and see what the manual says. I gotta open this back up again here. Let's see what the manual says about retarders, because they do have that in here. So again, to find the manual, we go to More Documents, click on CDL, do a search for retarder. See if it's working for us. Come on, computer, you can do it. I know you can. There you go. Blow it up so we can read it. All right, retarders. Some vehicles have retarders. Not all, but some vehicles have retarders. Retarders help slow a vehicle, reducing the need for using your brakes. They reduce brake wear and give you another way to slow down. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to do that. So they're acting as a brake, all right? According to the manual, there are 4 basic types of retarders: exhaust, engine, hydraulic, electric. That's kind of confusing and not necessarily accurate, but who cares? All retarders can be turned on or off by the driver. That's true. There'll be a switch on your dashboard. On some vehicles, the retarding power can be adjusted. Some of them have a low and high. Some have a low, medium, and high. When turned on, retarders apply their braking power to the drive wheels only whenever you let up on the accelerator pedal all the way. Okay? Now, an engine brake is an internal device in the exhaust system. On the bigger motors, it's actually a part of the motor itself. On a smaller truck, one of the smaller box trucks, it's literally a flapper valve in the exhaust pipe. It's like putting a potato in your exhaust. It causes back pressure, okay? And that's what's going on here, is that there's back pressure in the system creating this braking effect. Here is a illustration of a 4-cylinder diesel motor. So we've got a piston going up and down inside of a cylinder. The first piston on our far left is the intake stroke. So as the piston goes down, it is sucking in air. The second cylinder is the compression stroke, where the piston is taking that air that was sucked in and compressing it. And the way a diesel works is it's pure, the combustion occurs from pure compression. There's no spark plugs in a diesel engine. And with today's sophisticated electronically controlled fuel injection systems, the air is compressed without any fuel in it, and at the very last instantaneous perfect moment, the fuel is in a vaporized form injected into the cylinder and the combustion occurs. Kaboom. So the third piston there, that is the combustion stroke. So what happens is there's an explosion in this thing, right? And that explosion, those expanding gases take that piston and just slam that piston down to the ground. which turns that crankshaft, which propels us down the road, right? And the very next stroke is the exhaust stroke, and the exhaust valve opens up when under normal circumstances, all right? So this valve opens up, allowing this exhaust to vent out into your exhaust pipe. Well, what a engine brake does is it closes this off, okay? Which causes back pressure. So now this piston is trying to go up and expel that exhaust, but the exhaust valve is 90% closed, and so it's getting resistance. It can't do it. And on the compression, the other piston that's over on the other side there, there's no fuel going in there to counterbalance the back pressure. And so what that's doing is that it's mechanically braking the rear wheels because the piston can't force that exhaust out the way it normally does. So it's literally putting the brakes on through the drivetrain, not the brake linings, on your rear wheels. So if we go back to our question about the retarder here, it will actually cause a skid. It'll actually cause a skid when the road's slippery. So the answer is false. Caution, when your drive wheels have poor traction, the retarder may cause them to skid. Therefore, you should turn the retarder off whenever the road is icy, wet, icy, or snow covered. And I have cut and paste that out of the manual right there, okay? The other thing the manual says is because these devices can be noisy, be sure you know where their use is permitted. You've seen the signs before, haven't you? Telling you not to use an engine brake. You've seen that, right? And that's a noise ordinance issue. The reality is that there's drivers out there that take the mufflers off and they have open exhaust. And doesn't make a lot of noise other than when they kick that engine brake in. You've heard that, right? And people don't like that. Aunt Bertha down the road doesn't like that engine brake noise rattling the china off of her shelf. So that's why some local municipalities have put up rules that say no engine braking. Well, if you have an original equipment manufacturer's exhaust system, you're not going to have any trouble making too much noise, so don't worry about it. But now let's talk a little bit about the slippery conditions, okay? If the roads are slippery such that the rear wheels would skid, I'd suggest you not driving. We've been operating 20 years here at Interstate Truck Driving School. We have a perfect safety record, not one collision in that period of time. Not one reportable DOT collision, not one insurance claim due to a collision, okay? And the way we've accomplished that is to be very conservative with how we operate these trucks. If it's snowing, I'll tell my staff, okay, go ahead and drive around here in South St. Paul. So Andrew, if you've got a driving lesson in 3 weeks and it snows, I'll let you go out and drive around in South St. Paul here, but I'm going to tell my staff, no hills. No hills. Don't go up or down any hills. Part of the problem with the hill is you and I might be able to control ourselves, but what about the other blokes? And I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with some idiot losing control of his car running into me. No. I just as soon not have that conversation with him. And if the roads turn icy, if we get that freezing drizzle, off the roads. Shut her down, okay? The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations tell you to do that, gentlemen. They tell you to slow down if the roads are adverse, and if the conditions are sufficiently hazardous, the rules tell you you're supposed to shut it down, okay? All these truckers that put it in the ditch and get out there and get stuck on these roads, they're just not smart, okay? The downside to our industry is how do most of us get paid? By the mile, okay? If you're on a trip, you run into bad weather and you shut it down, how much you making? Nothing, okay? And that's the problem. People aren't smart enough to realize, you know what? I'm better off sitting this out and having a job tomorrow as opposed to pushing it, crashing, and losing my job, okay? So just be smart about it. You're going to have good days in this industry. You're going to have lousy days. Don't have a catastrophic day. And so in these kinds of conditions, you're supposed to use the engine brake going down the hill. The engine brake will cause a skid if it's slippery, so don't go down the hill. Park the truck. Make sense? And in today's world, with technology you and I have, you don't ever have a snowstorm that you don't know about. You know about it ahead of time. You know exactly what you're running yourselves into, right? Okay. So, last couple of minutes here, what I want to do is I want to go to cdltest.co and look at some of their questions and take a look at that. So again, you can find CDL test code through our website. And we'll scroll down here to the Class A. How many questions did I tell you it would be for a Class A test with the 3 knowledge tests? 100 questions. So check this out, 100 questions. All right? So question number 1, spring brakes are powerful springs that are held back by air pressure. If the air pressure is moved, the springs put on the brakes. Is that true or false? That's absolutely true. Brakes can fade or fail from excessive heat caused by using them too much and not relying on the engine brake. That's true, okay? You should use your engine brake as your primary and first source of speed checking on a hill and use your brakes as a secondary, okay? All air brake systems have an alcohol evaporator to put alcohol in the air system. No, they don't. Not all. That's a recommended thing in this part of the country, but not all of them have it. Common medicines for colds can make you sleepy. True or false?
True.
And that information is in the manual. The manual talks about distracted driving. It talks about alcohol. It talks about medications. It talks about sleep deprivation, a lot of that stuff. Now, here's a question we've had already, isn't it? What was the correct answer that I called to your attention when we had this question a few minutes ago?
Blind spot.
Blind spots. Okay? That's the correct answer. If you know the words in the manual, you'll find the correct answer on the test. The maximum leakage rates for an air brake system should be less than 2 psi in 1 minute for single vehicles, less than 3 psi in 1 minute for combination vehicles. Now, this is something that is worth bringing to your attention, okay? That's true. I want to show you something real quick here since that question came up. Because this is important for those of you that have to take a permanent test.
Did you say, is it timed?
No,
They're not.
the test is not timed. As long as you get there with time to finish before they close, you're fine. All right. In the manual, when talking about how much air you can lose in 1 minute, this is with the motor off, parking brake release, foot on the brake for 1 minute. It is 4 pounds maximum loss of pressure for a Class A and 3 pounds maximum pressure with a Class B with your foot on the brakes. If your foot is off the brakes, it's 1 pound less than that. Okay? So 3 and 4 with your foot on the brake, 3 and 2 with your foot off the brake. So when you get that question on the test, read the question very carefully. Now this one, I lost it here. This one, that we just had, doesn't tell us whether the foot's on the brake or not. Now the official one will tell you, foot on the brake or off, okay? But be really careful of that when you go to take your test. Read the question very carefully. Are we talking about on or off the brake? Now, when you take your permit test, the one that we're looking at here off the internet, notice it says single vehicles. That's Class B. Combination is Class A. So it's not going to say A or B. It'll say straight truck or single or bus. That's Class B. And then A is a combination. All right? So make sure that you do that distinction when you take that question. Okay? All right, next question. Why are placards used? To communicate the risk. What things should you check during your trip? Okay? We had this one. What's the correct answer?
Gauges.
Gauges, look, listen, smell. That's the correct answer. This thing is dead on accurate to this manual, okay? Anything else out there, any of those other practice tests are not anywhere near as accurate as this one is. How often should you drain your air tanks?
150.
Every day. So it's none of the above. Nope, at the end of the day. 2 basic reasons for covering cargo on an open bed. It's the third one, to protect people from the spilled cargo and to protect the cargo from the weather. It's in the manual. Okay. Step on and off the brake pedal to reduce air tank pressure. The parking brake knob should pop out when the air pressure falls manufacturer specifications. This is how you check which of the following. Andrew, you should be able to answer that.
Check that
It's the first one.
I was debating between the first and the third.
Yeah, see that. No, that's not going to tell you if the gauge is working right. It's to make sure the emergency brakes are coming on. Whoever thought this question up should be questioned. You should decrease your following distance if somebody's following you too close. No. All right. After coupling, how much space between the upper and lower fifth wheel? And incidentally, I don't like that term. What they're talking about is the skid plate of the fifth wheel and the apron of the trailer. So how much gap should be between the trailer and the fifth wheel? Correct answer is none of the above. Because how much gap is there supposed to be? None. It's supposed to be no gap. Okay. All right. What 2 things are most important to prevent a rollover? Cargo as close to the ground as possible, driving slowly around the curves. Okay. Name 2 situations where legal maximum weights may not be safe to haul. And I'd say bad weather or mountains. Okay. Because large cities or bridges, tunnels and bridges, night or rush, bad weather and mountains. Okay. All right. How many of you know this? Where do your reflectors go when you're stopped on a divided highway? 100 feet, 10 feet, 100 feet, and 200 feet. If it's a divided highway, all 3 of them go behind you at 10, 100, and 200. Okay. So you need to know those numbers. What does communicating mean? That's using your signals. Okay. This is a very accurate trailer handbrake valve should only be used to test the trailer brakes. Well, that's interesting. The answer to that's true, but what did they tell us about preventing rolling from down the hill? Watch, this is true. That's true. You're correct. But wait a second. Wait. Didn't you tell me I'm supposed to use my trailer handbrake when I'm on a hill so I don't roll back? Yeah. Oh. They forgot about that one. But so that's going to be true on the test, right? All right. So that's my class. Any questions? Okay. Study the manual. Make sure you know the answers to test your knowledge boxes. Use cdltest.co to practice, and you'll be in good shape. All right. All right. Thank you. If you have any questions about the school, I'll be available up front in a few minutes and can answer any questions. For those of you at home, thanks for watching.